Hello, and welcome to the Value of Values. Thank you for joining me. I'm Ella Snowball. I'm the CEO of Recruit for Vets, and we recruit vets both in the UK and overseas as well. We recruit locum vets and permanent vets and nurses and specialists as well. So I want to talk to you about the value of values, and the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I'm a master practitioner in NLP, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Now, I can't even say it, sorry. NLP, which is the shortened way of saying it, is an art and a science, and it looks at getting the best out of a person. So looking at how your mind works, the language that we work, and looking at how best to get people to be successful and lead a fulfilling and happy life. Now, part of what we look at are people's values, and that's why we're talking about it today. Now, at the moment, with everything that's going on, people are a bit up and down with what's going on and feeling not quite at ease. And over the last few weeks, I've been talking to lots of people because I'm recruiting at the moment, speaking to nurses, vets, VCAs, specialists, business owners about what's going on. This is why I wanted to talk about values when I was asked to do a webinar. And initially, when I started thinking about the webinar, it's probably about a month ago. And when I was talking to people, I was noticing that people were reacting differently to how they normally react. So, for example, a locum would come to me, who's worked for us as a locum for years, and would say, right, I want you to find me a permanent job. I need a job right now. And I was thinking, crikey, and this was happening a lot. Now, normally, as you'll know, there's lots and lots of locum work available, but there aren't many locums available. So there's normally a shortage of candidates and more work, and it's flipped at the moment. So I was thinking, have people's values changed because of the situation? Now, personally, if you were to ask me in January what was important to me about my career and my job, I think one of the main things for me was flexibility. So I've got 2 teenage children, a dog called Lester, who will probably make an appearance at some point, and I have a husband as well, and I like to spend time with all of them. So one of the most important things to me is flexibility. And I know this is the case for a lot of people who will be listening. And I'm very fortunate that in my job, I've been able to have flexible working. And a lot of our staff do as well at Recruit for Vets. Now, that was what was important to me in January. Then in March, when I started, after lockdown, when I started thinking about this webinar, it all changed. The most important thing to me was surviving and keeping the business afloat, because everything had just gone into chaos, as you'll all be aware. So, and then speaking to people, they were reacting differently as well. So I was thinking, what's going on? Are people's values changing because of what's happened? So then I started talking to people, and I started thinking, actually, I don't think people's values have changed. Now, they do change, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But what I thought was, I need to do something here. So why don't I do what I preach and actually do a values elicitation on people when I'm speaking to them? So every candidate that I'm speaking to at the moment, I do a values elicitation. And this is where we ask certain questions to find out what their values are. So today, the plan for my webinar is I'm going to explain how the values elicitation works. I'd like you to do it. So I'll be asking you the questions, and you will need a pen and paper, and I would like to elicit your values. Then you'll be able to use this technique moving forwards. And I'll explain how it works, and I'll explain the uses of it and where we use it in our business and how you can use it in your life as well. So first of all, we need to understand what values are. So values. For me, well, for everybody, they're what motivates us. So whether we're motivated towards getting something or away from something. And also, they're the things that make you feel a certain way when you've done something. So when you've done something and then you feel dreadful about it, it was probably because it didn't fit with your values. Now, how do we get our values? When we're younger, when we grow up, from about the age, well, from when we're very little until about the age of 7, as you know, children are like sponges. And we take in everything that's going on around us. So it can be what our teachers say to us, it can be what parents say to us, it can be what our friends have said to us, situations that we've seen, good or bad. And so all these things happen and they give us our set of values. Now, hopefully, they're positive values, but sometimes we do have unresourceful values. And using NLP, we can use some techniques to change the values, but we're not talking about that now. But it's just the purpose of NLP is to use techniques, not just on values, to get the best from people. So, for example, if you've got a limiting belief that's preventing you from doing something, NLP as a coaching technique can be used to get rid of that. So when do we use our values, and when do we use knowing our values in life? So every day when you make a decision about anything, a choice, your values are coming into play. Now, they're normally in a subconscious mind, so you don't consciously think that about your values. Some bigger decisions, you will think about your values, and probably a career and going for a new job is one of them. But all the time, you're constantly making decisions and choices, and your values are making a really important a role in that, and your beliefs as well. So today we're going to talk about how we use our values in career and in business when we're recruiting. And the reason I've chosen that area to talk about is because that's what I do. I recruit people. And I'm sure that most of the audience that are listening are either looking for a new career or are business owners who recruit staff. And it's just a great technique to use either for yourself to find out what's important to you about your next move, or for when you're recruiting. So we're going to get those the technique taught, and then you can use it. Now, what I will do is I'm going to take questions at the end. So if you've got any questions, please just type them in and then we can answer them at the end. And also, don't feel that when we do the values elicitation that you need to write down the questions, because if you email me afterwards, I'll send the questions out for you so you've got them there. Okay, so when we use the values, we can use them to manage your people. So if you knew what was important to somebody who you were managing, it makes it a lot easier for you to motivate them. So for example, if somebody's really motivated by working in a team, you want them working in a team environment because that makes them happy. If you've got somebody in a job who's really motivated by progression, then you need to be looking at ways to make them feel that they're progressing and speaking to them with that language as well. When you're recruiting, it's vitally important that the values of who you're recruiting fit the values of the job. And we'll talk more about that later and how to use that. So I think an easy way to explain how I use them is give you some examples of situations where I've used values and values elicitation to make situations better within Recruit for Vets. So in Recruit for Vets, I interview our staff that come to work for us. Now, as you know, you can get a CV and it looks fantastic and you're really excited and you think they're the best thing ever, great work experience. They come in, you meet them, you form your first opinion, which everybody does in those first few seconds. Everything's going really well. Early on in the interview now, I always do a values elicitation. And quite often, this is the decider for me in the interview. And I will actually stop the interview for the role if their values don't fit the role, if I don't feel that they're going to fit in based on their values. And I'll tell them that rather than going through the whole process. And then I'll also help them come up with ideas of what might be more suitable to them as well. Other ways that we use them within Recruit for Vets is we pride ourselves on really getting to know our candidates and understanding them. And even in the last few weeks when I've been recruiting, once I realised that I've got to go back to basics here and really be asking these questions, you can really get to know your candidates. So you might have a vet or a nurse coming to you saying, right, I don't want to do locum work anymore. There isn't any locum work. Find me a permanent job. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. But let's ask some questions first and find out what's really going on. So by doing this values elicitation and asking the questions that I'm going to be asking you, you really find out, and they also find out what's important to them. And I would say probably 4 out of 5 times, the candidate has said, actually, no, I don't want that permanent job. I'd rather stick with it, spend some time and wait till the locum positions come up, because that's what's important to me, that flexibility. Now, there is a place for locums out there, and I know there are a lot of locums listening. But also, I think when I speak to business owners, people want to move away from locuming. Now, I don't think locums will ever go, because there is always a place for them. But if you do want to move to a more permanent team rather than using locums, we're going to have to look at a way of matching the values of the locum and what they want with the new workforce, so more flexible working. And that's something that we've been talking about within our business and to business owners as well, ways of looking at a different workforce so it suits everybody. There was a huge crack of thunder then, in case you're wondering what that was. So, okay, so the other things at work that have happened, so obviously I haven't always known about values, and before I did, I always thought I was pretty good at recruiting. And I've got some examples of where this knowledge has really helped and made a difference. So I had a girl who came to work for us, and she fitted in perfectly with the team. Everybody loved her. The candidates loved her. The clients loved her, and she did brilliantly. Now, we're a sales office, so people are targeted on the amount of sales that they make, and a sale is a placement. And her figures were great. So we look at figures and the activity that people are doing. So everything was going really well. And then I noticed, and I work in the office on the floor, so I can see what everybody's doing. I noticed she wasn't as happy as normal. So I thought, right, I've just used this new technique. Let me see if she'd have some coaching. So I asked her, I said, would it be possible to do some coaching and just try out some of my new techniques that I'd learned? So she said yes. So we went and we did a values elicitation. And what became really apparent was that what was really important to her was spending time with her animals. She lived on a farm and she had lots of horses. So we work in an office, and at the time it was quite 8:30 till 5:30, an hour for lunch. And I thought, right, okay, what are we going to do about this? So I changed her hours and made her hours so she started earlier and finished earlier and had a shorter lunch. So she got more time to spend with her animals, which she loved. And actually her performance improved and her figures went back up again and everybody was happy. And then the days got shorter, the nights got longer, and she couldn't spend as much time with the animals again, so everything went downhill again. And obviously there's not much you can change about that. So we just decided that she'd go a separate way, and she's quite happy now. And actually she works on the farm where she lives, and she's very happy doing that. Another example of this is when you know your staff's values, you can understand that certain things will affect them in certain ways. Now, I've got an amazing member of staff who is fantastic, and her most important value is feeling secure, security, and that's quite a common one. So she's not bothered about progression, not of interest to her, but security is really important. So I know when I make a change in the office or something's going on, we're restructuring, that her work will be affected unless I explain to her exactly what's going on so she feels secure, she has the opportunity to ask questions, and it's fitting her values so she feels secure and she's fine. So that's another example. Another example, which will happen in many businesses and also for the candidates who are listening, if you're in a job and you're loving it and then suddenly you're getting up in the morning thinking, oh, I can't be bothered today. Oh, I really don't want to go to work. Something's probably changed within your job that's not fitting your values. So have a think about it. And once you've done this values elicitation and you know what your values are, just look at your job now and is it matching all of those values? So we had a great guy, still works for us now. I won't say his name. He's fantastic. And he was going through business, brilliant. He started first recruitment role, going all the way through. And then suddenly his performance dropped and he wasn't happy. Attendance wasn't great either. And so I listed his values and found out that progression was really important to him. So he changed his role so he had a real go at progression, and actually the world was his oyster and he could go for it, and he was totally supported, and he knows that in his role that he's in at the moment, he can run that part of the business one day. So it's huge progression and it's all there for him. And he is doing so well now. So they're just some examples of how I use values within Recruit for Vets. Now, what we have to be careful is at the moment is with the COVID situation. So I've mentioned already that what was important to me before in January is different now. I don't think that's your values. In fact, I know it isn't. It's more of a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on, and it's totally everybody's doing it. So I mean, we don't know. It's a hard time because there's no end to it. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. So people are suffering from anxiety. So knowing your values will help with this as well, because you can just find something that really fits with them, and that will make you happy. So when you're looking for a job at the moment, don't have a knee-jerk reaction, because the situation at the moment isn't going to last forever. And already, even in the last 2 weeks, we're seeing a massive increase in recruitment, both for locums, it's national as well, and for permanent staff. So things are getting better. So don't just jump into something just for the sake of it. And if you're not sure, please give us a call and we can help you. Now, if you're recruiting, this is really important as well. So you're going to get a lot of people approach you direct, and they will have applied everywhere, because I'm seeing that as well. And there'll be a lot of people who are jumping into jobs because it feels that's the right thing to do. So they're not doing it because they're just going to do it for 3 months and then go. At this moment in time, this feels the right thing that they need to do. So just be conscious that's happening, and you can use this values elicitation when you're interviewing to check that it really is right for them. So I don't want to put you off recruiting people, but so when we Recruit for Vets, everybody that we send over, we will have listed their values, and their values will fit with the job that they're going for. So that's something to be conscious of. So I think it might be time to elicit your values, if that's okay. And I'd love you to do this because it really is a useful tool. So you will need pen and paper. So if you'd like to go and get some, and you probably need 2 sides of A4 to do it on. So quite a big piece of paper, because you will write down a lot of words. So if you could just get some pen and paper, that would be great. Okay, so before we start this, there's a few pointers that I have to tell you. So I don't write the questions down because I'm going to give them to you on a piece of paper. I'll email them to you afterwards. So don't worry about that. I really want you to just enjoy it and just get your own values out. So don't worry about anything that I'm saying. Now, when we do this, we are speaking to the subconscious mind, not the conscious mind. So some of the questions that I ask may sound a little bit strange, and there's a reason for this, because it tricks your mind, so you're not using your conscious mind, you're having to think differently. So the other thing to remember is this. When you're doing values elicitation on the phone, you can't see what they're doing. So it's much easier to do this face-to-face. So I'll talk to you about it face-to-face first. So when you're eliciting values face-to-face in an interview or in an appraisal, you'll see them thinking. So you'll ask the question and then they will think and they will do something like this or this, but you'll know that they're thinking and you'll know to be silent. And then what will happen is they will then start giving you words. So they will tell you what their values are and you will write them down. Now, when you write them down, don't change it into your words. Make sure you're writing down what they say. So if they say something, a phrase that you wouldn't say, don't change it to how you would say it. Write it down exactly as they've said it. They're normally single words or very short phrases that they say. And write everything down. You'll be talking for about 20%, maybe less, and they'll be talking for about 80% of the time. When we do it on the telephone, which we do at Recruit for Vets with all the candidates, it's a little bit more challenging because you can't see what they're doing. So when they're thinking, you're going to have to remember that they're going to think, and you won't be able to see them thinking. So you're just going to have to hold that silence. And it is quite tricky to do. So just try and hold it. Think what I do, and I'll do it today, is try and think how long it would take me to think about the answers. But then on the phone, they will then read out their answers to you and you write them down again in their language. Now for me today, obviously, you can't talk to me, so I don't know how long, what you're writing or what you're saying, but we'll still be able to do it. So when we're doing it today, I'll write down my values as well, so it just lets me know how long it's taking you. The other thing to remember is that different people's words mean different things to them. So, for example, if I said one of my values was progression, my idea of progression would probably be quite different to your idea of progression. So when we get to the end of the values elicitation, we will go through and we'll find out what those words mean to people, the person that you're eliciting the values from. Now, obviously, if you're doing this on yourself, you don't need to do that because you know what it means to you. So you don't need to do that part. I will do it though today, just so you know how to use it. Another thing to remember is that this can be used for anything, not just about careers. So today I'm going to elicit values around careers because I think a lot of the people that are listening will either be recruiting or looking for changes in their career. So we'll be doing it in a career scenario today. So when I send you the printout of the questions, there will be a gap and you can put in any word. So it could be relationship, it could be what's important to you about buying a new house, whatever you want it to be. And it works for everything. It's really interesting and it's really useful. So that's it. So what we're going to do now is elicit your values. Now, you need your pen and paper ready. And as I said, I'm going to be writing down. So if you wonder what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing. And we're doing it for your career. So, what's important to you about your career now? If you write down every word that comes into your head. Okay, what else is important to you about your career? What else is important to you about your career? And what else is important to you about your career? Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to remember a time in your career, and it can be any job, not just the job you're in now, when you felt really, really motivated. And I want you to go back to that time now when you felt really, really, really motivated and write down what made you feel like that. How did you feel? What did you hear? What did you see? What was it that made you feel really, really motivated? Write it down now. Okay, so now you should have a list of words in front of you. And if you were listing the values, you'd have the list of the person's words in front of you. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to have a look at that list of words and just read them through. And I'd like you to look at that list and think, if you had all of those things, all of those values in the next job that you went into, would there be anything else that would cause you to leave that job that's not on that list? Write it down. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to get your list in front of you and I'd like you to grade it A, B and C. A being absolutely essential, you couldn't have the job without it. B being nice to have, and C being the icing on the cake. So A is absolutely essential, B is nice to have, and C is the icing on the cake. If you do that now, don't overthink it, just write them down. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is I'm going to offer you two jobs. And the first job is all your A's. So all the ones with an A, that job has got all those values in it. And the second job has got all the B's. Which job would you take? Now, hopefully you will have said A. If for some reason they don't say A when you're listing somebody else's values, you need to explain to them again about A, B, and C. A being essential, B being nice to have, and C being the cherry on the cake. What sometimes happens is they've just been working really hard to come up with all these the words from their subconscious and the conscious, that it can all become a bit overpowering. So this bit can be a challenge. So if you're doing this with somebody, it might take them a little bit longer to do. So then you ask them again, and then they'll come up with the A job. They want the ones with the essentials. So now, as I said earlier, you've finished your values elicitation now. So they're your values that you've written down. If you were doing this to somebody else and you've just elicited somebody else's values, you need to understand what the words mean to them. So what we do is we pick the A values, the essential ones for a person, and we find out what the words mean to them. So this is how we ask it. So pick one of the words. So say progression. You'd say, okay, so progression is one of your essential values. What does progression mean to you? And then write down what they say. And what does that get for you? And write down what they say. So if they said progression gets me money, what does that get for you? Happiness. What does that get for you? And then just keep going until you've already got a good feeling of what they want. And I'd do that for the top 5 words there as well. And you can see then what motivates them and whether they're motivated towards something or away from something. And it really helps you to get an idea of what they're doing and what's going to make them happy in the next job. So you've done all that now. and you've got a really good idea of what that person's looking for. So how do we use this moving forward? Now, if you're looking for a job, please tell your consultant or your agent, these are my values and this is what I'd like in my new position. And then they can find you something that fits with those. If you're not using a recruitment agency to find a new job, when you're looking at job advertisements, look for those words within the advert. When you're recruiting, a really clever way to find the values to attract the right people is look at somebody in a similar role to you're recruiting who's doing well and elicit their values, and then use their values to add the words into the job description. So hopefully it will attract people with similar values. A word of warning here though, we do need diversity in a business. So there'll be different values and different jobs and different people, and diversity makes a good team. So don't think you're going to model everybody all the same. But it's just a good way to get the right words into advertisements like flexibility, progression, so that you've got them all there. Another interesting thing is team as well. So what you don't want to do is if you want to work in a team environment and you like working with people, which I do, a lot of people do, you don't want to go for a farm vet job or a sole charge vet because you're not going to be with other people. So these are all things to think about. And when you're speaking to your recruiter or to the person who's interviewing you as a candidate, tell them this. And when you've been interviewed, it's really impressive if you say, look, one of my really important values to me is progression. You mentioned progression in your advert. Can you tell me more about that? And it shows that you're interested and you know what you want, which is really, really good. So using this moving forwards, it's worth doing every 6 months. Now, they do change values, and it's normally due to something big that happens in your life. So it could be a milestone birthday. So there's a saying that, life begins at 40. You feel differently about yourself. Lots of different things, which I won't go into now, but some big events in life can really change your values. So it's useful to check on them, just to make sure people are happy. But also, when you elicit values, because you're repeating their language and you're spending so much time talking to them, it builds amazing rapport. And the member of staff feels valued. And the person you're interviewing as well they'll be wowed by it. They'll think, gosh, I want to go and work for them. They were amazing. They told me stuff about myself that I didn't even know. You haven't actually told them anything. They've told you about them. But because you've repeated it back, it looks like you're telling them. So it's a really great trick for building rapport. So every 6 months is a good time to do it. And it also reminds you of the person's values and what's important to them. And if there is a slight issue with activity or how they're getting on within the job, it's a good thing to use, to look at and see if there's anything there that can be fixed or changed. So the other thing we have to be aware of at the moment, and I know it's a new norm working from home, and people think it's great working from home, but a lot of people don't like it. So you have to be very conscious that even you might love working from home, a lot of people really struggle with it and they can get quite depressed and stressed by it and anxious. I know a lot of the people that work for us find it a real challenge. Not the not working, the actual working from home, because they need to be around people and get that constant feedback. And so that's something to be very conscious of. So when we are thinking about doing home working, which I know a lot of people are with telemedicine, which is amazing, just make sure that whoever's doing it is actually happy and it sits with their values and it motivates them, because otherwise they won't be happy for very long. So so values are what make you happy. So if you find a job or a career or anything, a relationship that sits with your values and you're aligned with your values, then you will feel happy and you will progress. If what you're doing doesn't align with your values, you won't feel happy, and everything will feel like really hard work. You won't be in your flow, and getting up in the morning will feel like hard work. So what we've learned today is really, really useful. And I think that's everything that I've got to tell you about values today. Now, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. And as I said before, I do coaching. So if you want any advice with anything, please feel free to email me. I'm on ella@recruit4.com, .com, sorry. ella@recruit and then the number 4.com. So if you'd like to answer any questions, you're very welcome to. Okay, I don't think there are any at the moment. Okay, so please, if you've got any questions, just email me and I'll be more than happy to answer them at any time in the future. And this is going to be recorded as well. And I will send out the values elicitation. Thank you, Mila. Thank you very much. Thank you. I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.